Hello and welcome back to my channel. As you can tell by the title and the thumbnail of this video and my makeup on my face, I am doing a prom makeup look today, and if you would like to learn some tips and tricks on how to make your makeup long wearing if you have oily skin, and just in general how to make this stunning smoky eye, then all you have to do is keep on watching. The reason why I want to film this video is because I'm unable to do my friend's daughter's makeup for prom, and I thought to myself, it's actually been a long time since I've done a prom video, and even though this isn't going to be your typical colour scheme, it's pretty much a basic smoky eye that can be like any colour that you want. I'm just sort of matching my pinky magenta-y vibes and like going into plums just to make it a little bit different. But I've already got a video on how to do like a peachy smoky eye and an orange smoky eye from A to Z. It's a very thorough, in my opinion, video on how to do a nice cut crease, and this isn't going to be that much different. I'm just going to sort of talk you through all the details and why I do certain things, and this is sort of from a oily skin perspective. So I already washed my face with my Revolution Purifying Daily Facial Cleanser. I really like this. It's got niacinamide in, and it's actually really nice for the skin. It makes the pores a lot smaller. Like it just combats oil, sort of helps with my texture, prevents the acne from coming back, and all sorts. I actually really like this cleanser. I patted my face dry. I personally have used my Function of Beauty serum today, but you can moisturize with anything that you like. My favorite moisturizer is the Clinique one. I actually ran out of this. I need to repurchase. This is Moisture Surge. It's nice and gentle but not too heavy. It's got like this gel, almost, well, it is a gel, but it's not like, it doesn't feel oily on the skin after you apply it. So that's sort of my prep. I'm going to do my eyes as I always do. I always do my eyes first, because not only because you're an oily skin person, you want to have that foundation like as fresh as possible, and if you do it last, it's going to be as fresh as possible. I personally don't suffer with oily eyelids, so that's sort of a bonus, but I'm going to show you, even if you do have oily eyelids, the way I do things should prevent it from creasing. I love priming my lids with sort of like a semi-matte concealer, and this one in particular, it's been in like my makeup stash for a long time. I love the Lasting Perfection from Collection. This is a concealer, not a primer, and you want to get a reasonably light colour even if you're slightly darker in tone. This in particular is the Porcelain number 2. And you want a reasonable amount of that concealer on. Then you take a fluffy brush or your finger and tap this in. Because it is a concealer, it will block out the discoloration. It will make the eye just be like a blank page which you can paint on. Otherwise, the colours seem to be a little bit different, they apply differently, and more importantly, if you have oily eyelids, if you don't apply concealer, it doesn't prevent the oil from coming through. You've got skin and eyeshadow, and then the minute that sebum comes through, it mixes in with the eyeshadow. At least if you have that sort of protective barrier, at least if you have the concealer, it's like a protective barrier. And at this point, you can use any eyeshadow palette you like. I personally really like and highly recommend, especially for this time of year, the W7 Bare All Raw palette. I did a review on this. I even compared it to the highly inspired, this is a dupe for the Huda Beauty palette. They look pretty much identical. It's really, really nice, highly pigmented, and you can create a very nice smoky look with a pop of shimmer on the lid with this. I personally love, and my favorite ever formula is the Be Perfect palettes. They are a little bit more expensive, and I don't have a justification for it. I really, really like this. I'm going to be using the Antidote palette today, but again, just use anything that you have. With the technique that I'm going to show you, you can make any eyeshadow work. I'm starting off with a fluffy brush, but not like a super big brush. This is about 1/4. If I go in sections, if I were to make a dot, like 1, 2, 3, 4, that's about how big the brush is. You want to have control. Makeup is all about control, about how long you've been doing the same motion over again. Practice makes perfect, and just like handwriting, the more you do it, the better you're at it. I can't talk today. As you can imagine, as I've mentioned, I'm going with like purples and pinks, so I'm going to focus on this corner of the Antidote palette. The first shade I'm going to use is Aubergine. I love a good aubergine colour, and I'm dipping into that. Like, that looks stunning, and I'm going to pat it on the outer corner of my eye. As I've mentioned earlier, you can make this look any colour that you like. So if your prom dress is pink, go with like a slight pinky colour. Don't go with Barbie colour, even if your dress is like Barbie pink. That never looks good, or very rarely looks good, especially with something as important as prom. You want to look sophisticated. I mean, if you want to go for it, I'm not here to stop you, by no means. And as you can see, I keep taking a little bit more and tapping. If you have very cheap eyeshadow and it doesn't come out as intense, all you need to do is build. And if it's still not showing up as strong as mine is, you might want to take a concealer that's slightly wetter, or use a liquid lipstick as a base. If you use a liquid lipstick as a base, it will allow the eyeshadow to stick, and the lipstick shade already has a colour to it. Actually, no, you know what? Enough information. I just don't want to confuse you. There are so many different techniques that people can use for makeup. It's actually crazy. If you would like to see like a makeup tutorial where I use lipstick as a base, let me know. I'm sure many of you would be interested in seeing that. And as you can see, I'm using the same shade. What I did was go at an angle, and now I'm sort of going back in above my crease. I have a very big, not a very big, a decently sized lid space, so I can play with my eyeshadow. If you have smaller eyelids, don't worry, just sort of pat it all on, and then we'll get to the shape in a minute. If you feel like you can't make that sharp line, don't worry, that's why we have no foundation. We can correct that with some makeup remover, or you could stick a tape on here. Just honestly, the techniques are endless. The makeup sort of application varies from person to person. You will have to decide what you feel comfortable with. So I'm finished with my first brush. I never like to bring my eyeshadow round here, at least not this type of colour. I'm going to take a clean brush that can be a little bit fluffier, because all I'm going to do now is just use this brush to diffuse the edges of my dark pink, my aubergine shade from the Antidote palette. I'm using sort of like a circular motion right in this inner corner. This shape, what I'm doing right now, could work with any colour. Green, like a foresty green, that makeup look could look stunning. So this side of the palette, oh, that could look beautiful. Browns, blues, again, blues are quite hard to pull off. You might need to use darker blues or like greeny blues. Some can look very, just a little too much basically. Very, very nice. I'm going back to my brush, and I didn't realise I don't have a black in here. I need to dip into one of my faves, the Carnival 3. This is a lot more bold, but I need the black for this look. And I was going to use the same brush, but I need to do the other eye, so I'm going to leave this there. Let's take somewhat like a flat brush, and I'm taking Black Beach, one of my favourite blacks, and I'm just going to make this a little bit darker, and by a little bit I mean a lot. At this point, this is a almost very boring part where it's all about back and forth, taking all of your brushes, and by all of them I mean mostly these two. The one that I use to apply the aubergine shade, and my blender to create that very nice blend. And it's a matter of going back and forth in a wiper motion or slight, very delicate circular motions. And at this point, depending on whether you want a cut crease or not, I'm not going to bother. I do have tutorials on how to do a cut crease, so find it here. For the center of my lid, I'm going to use Cutie Pie, and I highly recommend using your fingers when it comes to shimmers. The oils and the warmth of your finger will make them pop. If you have extremely oily eyelids, I would personally avoid shimmers, because they do have a base to make them sort of that texture. They can be a little bit too much for some people. Okay, I'm taking my brush, my sort of main brush, and I'm just giving this a little blend right here. And because my finger is a little bit too big, I'm taking a flat brush for a lighter shade called Oyster for the inner corner. I'm going to mix a little bit of Cutie Pie on top. I'm not a fan of how almost stark white this is. I'm now going to take a fluffy brush and the tiny little bit of buff, like a bronzer almost shade. You could definitely do it with a bronzer. I just think this is slightly a little bit lighter, and I'm going to put this right here. The lid looks a little bit bare here at the front, and this will help to blend the makeup into the rest of the face. All I need is more black, so I'm taking Black Beach and a little bit of setting spray, and that basically turns it into almost like a liner. If it's a little too wet, just grab a little bit more black, and then almost like a dabbing and pulling motion. Just want to build the intensity. If you feel like you've applied too much, just stop, get your sort of main brush, blend blend the edges. And by blending, I don't mean blend it everywhere. You kind of want to put it on the very edge and blend on that very edge. And unless you can't see why we're doing the eyes first, let me show you. I am going to take a little bit of makeup remover and I'm wiping my under eye, which is, if I did my base first, that's where my concealer would be. Something that is trying to hide all the sort of redness, bluey colour of my under eye. This is what would be in my base. And if you're unhappy with the shape that you have created, you can take a little bit of makeup remover and sort of give it like a little wipe to make sure it is exactly the shape that you want. Okay, let me do the other eye off camera and I will be right back to show you the rest of the makeup. I caught up with my other eye and I'm going to briefly move onto the base. I'm going to finish off my base and then I'll do the bottom lash line, etc, etc. With something as important, with an event as important as prom or bridal makeup or anywhere you're gonna be for a long time, you do want to prime. I'm not the biggest fan of primer because a lot of primers do cause my pores to block, therefore I get more acne, but I can sort of bear with it every now and again. And the best one I have found so far that prevents from oiliness, it makes my skin look nice and it elongates the wear of my foundation, is the Tarte Timeless Smoothing Primer Base. As I said, I like to focus this in my T-zone because that is where my oils come through very quickly. I am oily all over. I don't have combination skin, I have oily skin through and through, but that's the sort of main zone of where my foundation sort of is very glowy, and that's the zone where I don't want it to be too shiny too quickly. Today for my foundation, I'm going to use one of my absolute faves, and it is the Maybelline 24 Hour Super Stay foundation. I really like this. Did a wear test on this. It is still one of my faves, and if you have acne prone skin, I highly recommend using a sponge to apply your foundation. It will look a lot smoother, especially if you have acne scars. That technique will allow you to get as smooth of a finish as possible. Otherwise, a brush could sort of trap that foundation in those little indents and it's just not going to look as cute. Okay, all right, I forgot how good of a coverage this foundation is. I literally cannot see any discoloration from underneath. And even more so if you really have like a bumpy acne, like for example this one, there's a little spot there. You can build the coverage on that bad boy like no problem. By the way, you can hide the colour but you can't hide the texture, okay? So just embrace your bumpy skin because it looks cute anyway. I'm ready to move on to the next step, and that is cream bronzer. I love cream bronzer, especially this one from Fenty Beauty in Butter Biscuit. It's a perfect sort of almost contour shade as well, and you want to use a cream bronzer purely because it's going to look very almost natural. It's going to blend with your foundation, and more so when we apply sort of the powders on top, it's going to make the makeup last. It's like you're building a house. You have several layers of bricks to make the foundations strong. So that's exactly what you're doing right here. And even if you're sweating, even if you're oily, it will sort of have more layers for it to like fall down upon. If you only have one little layer, one little veil of foundation, obviously that will rub off quite quickly. But if you have a foundation, if you have primer, if you have foundation, cream bronzer, powder bronzer, regular bronzer, by the time your oil goes through all these layers, you'll be like 4 hours into the party. I'm even going to use cream blush today, and I'm using one of my faves from Made by Mitchell. This is Peach Sugar. Time for some under eye concealer, and I again love this stuff. This is Collection Lasting Perfection, and I am going in with the shade number 2 because why not? I'm going to highlight my inner corner, my under eye with this. Time for some powders. I'm going to use the Fenty Beauty one because I have it here, but I really like the Rimmel powder, loose powder. I always use loose powders. I feel like I have a lot more control with it. I'm going to start with my under eye, and I'm using my dampened sponge. This will allow me to press that powder into my pores. I am leaving like a tiny little gap underneath the lash line because I'm going to be applying eyeshadow on there and I want it to pop. I want something for it to adhere to. Don't worry if you can see the powder when you're applying it, because the dampened sponge will pat it all in. Besides, I am going to sweep off the excess amount as well, but you want to press this powder into your face, make this foundation set. And I have to do this with my dampened sponge, otherwise I cannot stand the feel of powder on my skin. And as you can see, I'm focusing on my T-zone again because I will be using a powder product on the outer portion of my face. So I don't need 2 layers of powder, because otherwise the other powder that I'm going to use, the bronzer really, it's not going to have something to adhere to. So I've contoured with the Fenty cream because it is slightly cooler in tone. I'm going to combat that with a little bit of bronzer. You don't have to do this if you feel like your cream bronzer was warm enough. You're absolutely fine. You don't need to do this step. Actually, it's a step worth doing sometimes because it allows you to blend that excess amount of powder into the rest of the face. Just allows you to blend. I feel like a drag queen and I'm loving it. Okay, I'm taking my main brush and I'm dipping it into Aubergine, the shade that I've been using all along, and I'm starting on my lower lash line in the middle, and I'm sort of sweeping it back to join the outer corner of my upper lid, like so. I like having my eyes at an angle to make them look stretched, so that's what I'm going for. And once the inner portion is blended, you've got almost like 2/3 of that eyeshadow on there. That is exactly what I want. I'm going to do it again, so starting in the middle, sweeping back. If you have smaller eyes, you need to use smaller brushes, but don't be afraid to have a smoky, big blown out lower lash line. Don't play safe. If you're not putting anything on the lower lash line, you're doing it wrong, okay? This is where you can shine. It just makes the whole look come together. And I'm going to use my flat brush and Cutie Pie for that 1/3 that I've got left of my lower lash line. If you are scared to look a little bit too heavy, don't do this next portion, but I like drama and I like black on the lower lash line, especially on the outer corner, to sort of tie in the top and the bottom of my eye. Just a tiny little bit on the almost 1/3 of the outer corner. Just a tiny little bit. Time for mascara and the falsies. If you need help on how to apply falsies, you will find a tutorial for that on my channel as well. Actually, as I'm waiting for my lash glue to dry, I'm going to fill in my brows. If you need a tutorial on how to fill your brows, it is also featured on my channel. And there's not much left. All I'm going to do is my lips, and you are welcome to do whatever lip you want with a makeup like this. Just go ahead and use whatever lipstick you want. Just make sure that you reapply for the pictures. So what I'm going to use is a liquid lipstick from Jeffree Star in Cherry Wet, because I've been absolutely obsessed with that colour lately. Alright you guys, so here it is. This is my final prom makeup suggestion for you guys this year. I really like it. I love the colour scheme. As you can see, I've been really enjoying this pink, magenta, raspberry, any shade of pink I've been obsessed with lately. I hope you like the makeup, and I hope you have learned some tips and tricks on how to make your makeup look nice and long wearing during prom. I hope you leave your comments and likes down in the comments below. I would really appreciate that. If you have any questions or would like some further guidance on how to do your prom makeup, then leave your comments down below. It will be a pleasure to help if I can. And yeah, I hope you have enjoyed that. If you did, make sure to like, comment, subscribe. But for now, thank you so much for watching. You are the best, and I hope to see you next time.